So in March this year, the Australian Senate finally approved an investigation into the excess deaths and the mortality rate in Australia. The spike has been estimated up to 12 to 17%, depending on who you look at. And in any case, a 12 to 17% spike in deaths around Australia in the last 3 years post, not during the pandemic, post certainly raises a few eyebrows. So Senator Ralph Babet wrote for The Light Australia saying, "It took 5 attempts to convince my colleagues in the Australian Senate that a spike in the number of Australians dying was worth investigating." The fact that it took 5 attempts is very interesting, and the fact that it was only won by a 31 to 30 vote is even more telling. I'm interested as into why the 30 people who voted against didn't want the investigation done at all. Potentially they are the ones who enforce policy, and maybe there's going to be some uncomfortable questions and truths unfolded. The committee allocated 5 full days of public hearings into menopause, but just 1 for excess mortality. Just 6 hours of testimony for more deaths than we've seen since World War II. So we have actually seen a spike in excess deaths in Australia that have not been seen since World War II, which is insane to think that it is not worthy of investigation. The inquiry heard that 702 of the 17,276 deaths, 4.06%, where was listed on the death certificate were from alone. In other words, almost 96% of the people who died from had pre-existing chronic conditions. The Australian Bureau of Statistics confirmed the people recorded to have died from or with was 87.3 years, yet the life expectancy at birth for an Australian was 82.2 years for a male and 85.3 years for females. So it's clearly not the bogeyman that it was painted to be. Senators were told that a peer-reviewed paper had found that there were undisclosed deaths during the Pfizer COVID-19 trials, deaths that raised serious questions as to the safety of the vaccine and its ongoing effect on health of many Australians who were coerced into taking it. The one thing I'm seeing with this inquiry is the same thing I see with most Senate inquiries, and the fact that it is pushed back against by the people who are probably leveraged by the people who influence their policy. And as we see within all of our governments, every time there is funding and lobbying, it always influences the way we make our decisions. And that should never be the case. Obviously, something happened during the pandemic period, and we need to know what caused the issues that we're seeing now. I can only hope that the decisions that were made in that time were not to serve corporate interest and were, at best, made out of fear to serve the greater good, for lack of a better word. But if history shows me anything, that generally, unfortunately, corporate interests always win. And I think, my opinion, that is what we've seen here.